Hey, everyone. Thank you for coming back to Midwest Chicana podcast. I have some very special guests today. Diosselyn Tot. Hi, how are you?
Good. Hi.
And Trinidad Raj Molina. How are you doing today?
Good.
Just want to appreciate both of you coming on. You guys are going to talk about some amazing topics today, but I know, Trinidad, you sent me that picture and that information. I'd love for you to share with the community on what that was and who did that.
So Diosselyn and I work a lot on immigration issues, and for some people don't know, the world is in the middle of the biggest global migration crisis in world history, as in 70.8 million people are displaced in the world. I'll come back to mention that number later. In Syria, I lived near there once. Those people there, those artists in Syria, where the whole society has been bombed to the ground. A lot of people are still living in the midst of a civil war. A lot of people are internally displaced refugees there. It really struck me that the recent events with George Floyd, that they show that solidarity even all the way over there on basically on ruins. They wrote that on some ruins of the building that's been bombed, right? And they showed that solidarity with this global issue, right?
It was moving. I started crying a little bit when I was making that for you today because it just hits like, wow. Even around the world, I mean, I think all of us have been dealing with this in many different ways, and especially here for our Black community, and standing in solidarity with them. And just we wanted all to take a moment to think about them and definitely say that we are here with them, standing alongside them in solidarity today and always, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So the main topic we had set was really the build to talking about universal legal representation for all immigration cases. That's kind of the big topic on mine for this podcast. And then I couldn't help but have to make that connection to George Floyd, because racism is on everyone's minds right now, right? And racism is still at the heart of what's exacerbating the global migration crisis also. It's always that sense of that group is not my group, so I can get away with abusing them or treating them as less than human if I feel like it. That's what we're all fighting, right? So universal representation, the basic of it, we'll come back to this to talk more about it fully. The basic is, for a lot of people who don't know, in the United States, all those videos people saw a few years ago of the migrant caravans, all these people fleeing Central America, they're not fleeing for no reason. There's real dangers they're fleeing from because they came and decided to seek asylum. That's a different political term than being a refugee. It means you have to be the one, if you make it through to the United States, to go to the immigration court yourself and request asylum. And the thing is, people don't know immigration law is civil law, not criminal law. So they're not required to provide you with a lawyer. And you're a poor asylum seeker, which is basically a refugee. It's just a different political term. So you're not eligible for normal refugee services. You're struggling to plant roots here without guidance or any social work support. And you have to be able to represent yourself under international law, basically, in an immigration court, even here in Kansas City. And that's the heart of the issue. People don't know that Kansas City's immigration court, we have one of the worst rates for accepting asylum in the whole country. There's like an 88% chance, maybe greater, that you will lose your asylum plea in the end. And that's the big issue. We kind of want to circle back to that by the end after we kind of tie into some other topics, right?
Absolutely. And this is so educational, especially I'm going to just talk personally because my husband just became an American citizen about 3 years ago, and as did his parents. And you just don't know all the details. I'm an American citizen. I was born here. And so you just don't know all of the details and processes and the pain. And then on top of that, what I recognize in my own is that, he's leaving a country that he loves. to come here for safety and to have a life that he can flourish, and then his family can have that dream, right? So it's a torn feeling, I'm sure, for many.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we? We didn't. I don't think we introduced the work we do, like our groups.
Yes, please do. So sorry. I got into it right away. Yeah. So Diosselyn, do you want to go ahead and start and let us know a little bit of background about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so again, hi everybody. My name is Diosselyn, and I do a little bit of everything, I want to say, in a way. One of the things that I'm very connected in the community is immigration projects and different things that are going on, different issues that are happening. And this is how I was able to connect with Trinidad years back and started working with him. There's a lot of things that are going on locally that we just want to raise awareness to, and we want to bring forth, just because there's so much movement and there's so many people already involved that the more people, the better. And the more people that know that this movement is going, the more we can get individuals to act and get our voices heard.
And that was one of the main reasons we wanted to do this, because a lot of people that listen to this podcast may not know you or Trinidad, or know the amazing work that you're doing. And with all the events that are happening right now and all the issues going on, people want to know how to help. And so this is a great way to inform them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Trinidad, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I'm Trinidad Raj Molina. My name is a mix because I'm Bengali Mexican American. So my mother is from Bangladesh. Yeah. She was an internally displaced refugee essentially during the Bangladesh Liberation War, which was closer to a genocide back in the 70s. So she lived through that. She made it through. My dad's side's the Mexican side, and he was born in Dallas. So I was born in Dallas. I've lived most of my life in Kansas City, but I've been around a lot. I studied a semester in El Salvador, a semester in Jordan. I've been around in Jordan. I went to school with Syrian refugees. We were on the bus together. I've seen a lot, and back then you would see bombings on the news in Jordan, right, of the Civil War. So I've seen a lot of causing the global migration crisis, and it's on my mind when I do the work here in Kansas City. So I work for AIR, which advocates for immigrant rights and reconciliation, and we're one of the major groups in Kansas City, not just we do immigration advocacy, we do accompaniment, and we do education and organizing. And especially in the past year, we've done a lot of organizing to see some change happen in defense of immigrants, right? And we're really well connected to a lot of the immigrant community defense here. And a few years back, I also started for the diocese, the Catholic Diocese of Kansas City, Missouri, St. Joseph. I started the first immigration ministry in their whole history. And now that's still up and running, and we're still doing really good. And I work with them and collaborate.
We're just excited to have you both here. You both have a wealth of information and needed information that we need to get out right now. So I want to start with Diosselyn in regards to, I know we had conversations prior to this podcast in the terms of the safe and welcoming event, things that are happening around that for the last couple of years in Kansas City, Kansas. And I know a lot of people were interested in possibly doing something like that in Missouri. And we'd like to bring that conversation back up. And if you have any updates on what's happening in Kansas and just what's going on more with that program.
Yeah. Let me give a quick summary about safe and welcoming again, just in case this is a new topic for anybody that's seen. So Safe and Welcoming is a movement that was started about 3 years ago in Wyandotte County with different leaders, different organizations. Some of them are More Square, El Centro, AIR, Granby Park, ACLU, and more organizations on that end. So before I give you the statistics, the main thing that the Safe and Welcoming Ordinance calls for is two main things. The first is the municipal IDs, which is for individuals who otherwise don't have an ID issued. They're able to get this. This would only be boundary by the city limits, and depending on the commissioners and mayor that they talk about, it would have a price, but it wouldn't be a high cost either. The main thing is that this municipal ID would be useful, again, within the city limits to individuals to get services like in putting their kids in school, getting medication, so different ideas. When you think about where they ask you for your ID, this is where it would help individuals. They would be able to get a municipal ID. However, this municipal ID would not reflect a driver's license, would not be an identification that you can use to travel. But again, it would be an identification that you could use within the city limits that are put forth, and be able to use it as an identification in a way. But again, with its limitations. The second thing that it calls for is the ICE non-compliance policy. The ICE non-compliance policy is just asking local police officers not to engage in ICE activities. This means not giving them names, numbers without a fair warrant. This really asks for them to enact on the warrant policy, where they have to have it before they go and arrest or question or bring in somebody. So again, those are the two main points that the Safe and Welcoming Ordinance is asking for. This movement has been going on for 3 years. And right now we have over 30 organizations who support this in the KC metro area, both in KCK, KCMO. Then we also have multiple leaders from the community that are in the forefronts leading this and constantly doing phone bankings, text bankings, doing community events to let the community know what Safe and Welcoming is and where we are standing at. They have done several commissioner meetings, wrote several letters. We have over 4,000 postcards signed from the community. And honestly, Trinidad helped me remember everything that we have done, because we've done things from training, education, interviews, radios, podcasts, actually going to the commissioner meetings. And the last thing that just happened recently was that we finally got a special hearing last Thursday. It was the beginning to hopefully more work and hopefully more steps taken forward to being able to get this passed. The commissioners and the mayor finally discussed this topic. We weren't able to get enough moments to do public commentary, but we are hoping that soon they give us that minute to be able to share different stories that individuals were already ready to prepare and say in front of the commissioners. There's so many people out there that want this and are ready to speak up for this, and we want to make sure that their voices are being heard. And did I miss anything, Trinidad? Please.
Did you mention the third most diverse county in the country? Did you mention that part?
Excuse me?
Wyandotte County is the third most diverse county in the country, is what they say. And
yeah.
That's the issue. It's one of the most diverse counties in the country. People, if you're Black or an immigrant or Central American, Mexican, whatever, there's many marginalized groups in that county that don't have actual representation at this time in their own city, right? Mm-hmm. That's what the issue represents, is that county needs to start listening to its people, right?
Yeah.
So what can, go ahead, Diosselyn.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, and that involves different community groups. Think about the elderly, when they mm-hmm. their driver's licenses, being able to get a municipal ID would be wonderful for them, instead of having to do all the circles and turners that you have to get in order to get this simple identification. People who are coming, have served their time and are rejoining our community. This would be a great way for them to start over again as well. There's so many different groups that would benefit from a municipal ID. And again, like Trinidad said, we're the third diverse city. It's, we should embrace it. We should put forward that welcoming stage for everybody and anybody.
And I get feedback about homeless and mental disabilities.
Yes, homeless, mental disabilities, yes.
So what is it that the community can help you with even more so at this point? Is there any other meetings? Is there anything else that you need from our community, especially for people hearing this for the first time and maybe want to get involved or help? How can they do that?
So there's several ways that individuals can get involved. The first two things that come to my mind is call your commissioners. If you know who your commissioner is, call them, send them a letter, let them know that you're in support of this. The second thing is please get in touch with us. You can go to whitegoid.org and it will give you information of what we just talked about right now, all the different steps that have taken forward, and also give you even more background on what other cities have implemented safe and welcoming ordinance, how they have turned out, etc. Again, that is whitegoid.org. And you could also, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you could also sign up right there to start getting more information on this movement. But besides that, you can connect with El Centro, you can connect with AIR, you can connect with More Square, you can connect with different organizations that are involved already, and I'm pretty sure they would be gladly to get you connected with one of us. You can connect with Trinidad.
Yeah, there you go.
He will lead you to
ACLU of Kansas is a big leader of that.
Yes, the of Kansas are the biggest leader on this end. But they also hosts with AIR. They host different meetings where individuals can come and join. You want to talk about that, Trinidad, a little bit?
Yeah, that would be a great segue into what you do, Trinidad, and especially about. We have a couple notes here that I definitely want you to touch on for sure. About asylum, not taking in refugees anymore, family separations. There's so much that goes along with immigration. I know that's a lot like at one time, but we don't want to miss anything so that way the community gets educated, and especially from people that are working the front lines, which again, thank you for all you do for doing that. So yeah, if you can take us into what you do and how and all, please. I think it's Diosselyn. Her babies.
Okay, I think she'll be back in a second.
She will.
Diosselyn mentioned that plug there. If people are interested in joining our monthly AIR network meetings, where we keep upping our game every month to get more and more organized in how we mobilize our people to help support these different issues. Send us a message, info@airkc.org. I wonder if I can write that in the chat box or something. See if I can get it. Because that way people don't have to contact. You can just send us a message. My coworker Nubia, she also does rapid response training, which is really cool. And some people love doing that more than some people in our network like rapid response. Some people like the company, some people like working on the organizing stuff on these policies, and we're growing out our network. We're really well connected now. So everything you brought up about the list you mentioned a second ago. It's there's so much going on all right now in immigration. I'll phrase it this way: United States, we historically have been one of the world's leaders for refugee resettlement, right? And after World War II, United Nations formed to try to address the problems that come up when we don't have any system in place to help manage the relationship between countries, right? Because when those problems become exacerbated, it leads to something like World War II. And after World War II, there was 25 million people that were displaced throughout the world after World War II. So I want everyone can try to visualize that number for a second. Try to imagine 25 million people in one spot, and it's really hard to do. It's a lot. That's how much destruction had happened in World War II, and a lot of us, that's a memory we're forgetting. We weren't in that generation, but people during that time remember it was a lot of chaos in the world. That's some of the most murder in war globally, I think, and maybe in world history, I think, in that. So that's so many people displaced. But afterwards, the United States had a commitment with the UN to uphold a newly established international asylum law to welcome asylum seekers and let them have their fair hearing and things like that. Today, this is always a hard part for me. Today, there are 70.8 million people displaced in the world. So that's more than twice the size of after World War II. Some are externally displaced, some internally displaced, some are asylum seekers. That's the largest global migration crisis in recorded world history. How long has the world existed? The only person who's ever tried to prove me wrong on that point told me the Bering Strait, and we have no way of verifying, but there might be something to that. The Bering Strait from the, okay, look it up if you don't know. That's historic. So it doesn't count. In a sense. So 70.8 million people displaced. A lot of them are, there's a percentage that are asylum seekers, and a lot of them from Central America right now. All those people saw the migrant caravans a few years ago. That issue isn't over. That issue never ended. So the U.S. policy has really been trying to basically ban asylum, and that's against the international commitment we made a long time ago. And the excuses are always, I'm not afraid to say it anymore, they're racist excuses, right? Although worried that those people will infect our country and those people will ruin our, whatever, they'll exhaust our resources. But the reality is, if you look at the largest estimate we had of how many people were coming in the original caravan, that number is such a small percentage of the population that if all of them came, they didn't all come past our border, but if they all did, it was like around 60,000. Even if they all resettled here, that's like less than 0.05% of our population. You wouldn't even notice they all came, except for the media attention. So it's always an excuse why we can't help them, right? Yes, there are bigger long-term international solutions we need to look at to address how we stop causing these conflicts, right? That's the big picture. But in the meantime, for now, what we can focus on is how do we not abuse asylum seekers, because we have responsibility in that here. People don't know that some people who made it past the border seeking asylum got processed to various ICE detention holding facilities around the country. Last summer, I was traveling. I was moving back to Kansas City. I drove all the way from Seattle. So I stopped in Denver on the way, and I visited someone I had heard about. And I asked, he was 18 from Guatemala. I asked him, how long did it take you to get to this point here in Denver? How long did it take you to get from Guatemala to the border? That whole journey, it took like a few weeks. I was kind of like, whoa. I used to think of El Salvador being a really far away by plane. It took him a few weeks. But those really dangerous journeys, it's very traumatizing journeys. That's a whole other topic. It's not easy and fun. No one would want to do it if you had a better option. People should know that. So he got through 6 months or something in detention. A lot of people, that's what it sounded like, and they finally get released and might find a city to go try to start settling down in, and then go apply for asylum in the local court. So the problem is they're new to this country. They don't know which courts are the best courts to apply for asylum. They're basically refugees, except a lot of refugee resettlement groups don't have the funding that covers asylum seekers, so they don't get that support. A lot of people, more than people have settled here in the Kansas City area. Some of them in Northeast Kansas City, some in Wyandotte. There might be some in Johnson County, for all I know. It's hard to get an accurate number of how many people have actually come in our area, but we know it's substantial compared to 2 years ago. The most accurate number we have, looking at Transnational Records Access Clearinghouse, which helped look at records for our immigration court here. The number of asylum applications in our court, it was a really low number, and then in the past 2 years, it's jumped to over 1,000. So it's definitely over 1,000, right? And most of that are all people from Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. For people who don't know, why are people fleeing there? They're fed up with this corrupt government. If you don't know the history of why the corruption has continued to this point there, that's a privilege we can have here to not have to worry about it. But really, the United States has partial responsibility in that. So we really need to start learning about these things. That's another podcast. But not hard. None of this stuff is a secret, by the way. Many American citizens don't know about it, but none of this is a secret. If you go live around different places in the world, you hear about it a lot more, because we don't like to talk about it here. Right?
I agree with Trinidad. Everything that Trinidad is saying is, once you start getting into these conversations and once you start looking at all these different trainings and start discussing this, it is, I kind of want to say, bizarre on how many things are going right in front of us and we don't even notice it at times. Because he's right, those asylum windows that we used to have, maybe they were this big one day and now they're like this big, those numbers are dropping left and right, and the individuals that do come here are not, sometimes it's not by choice. It's really, they're fleeing for their lives. They're trying to, I think that survival is the biggest key word there. People are trying to survive. I know we talked about even think about what's going on environmentally. Maybe the grounds that they farmed on, maybe the things that they used to do are no longer accessible because of gentrification, because of changing drastically nowadays, etc. And we have to migrate, and it's something that has been part of our history since the beginning of history. Our communities, our peoples migrated all the time, depending on seasons and many different things. And I just think about nature too, and all these different things that we see constantly. And it's unfortunate that we close the doors sometimes.
Yeah. So can you both talk then about the part that a lot of us hear about on the news, but very, very much only get a glimpse, I'm sure, of what is really happening, but that goes into where the, the people are put into those detention centers and the reality of what those are and what they do to people. Can you talk about that and to the audience that just only sees it on the news and doesn't really know anything much more than that?
One thing that comes to mind that ties together the past topics we were talking about so far, one man's case here, I won't mention the name, but one major case we were advocating for a few years ago, a lot of different groups were working together to support one family out of KCK. Suddenly, out of nowhere, they decided to just detain the father for a few months, and then we thought maybe he'd get released, and then randomly they deported him without any warning. And what people don't understand is usually he had just started because he had a minor violation on his record, minor civil violation. Like it's usually stuff like traffic violations. And what people need to understand, if they're not familiar, is if you have a traffic violation on your record, it's not a commensurate punishment to get separated from your family and deported. Especially right now, the research is really clear. A lot of people, if they get deported to El Salvador right now, there's a good chance they'll get murdered. It's not a debatable point. It's really in Central America, they call it one of the most dangerous areas in the world outside of a combat zone because of the gang violence, the gang war, the homicide rate so high, and people get taken advantage of if you're vulnerable. Right? So when you get deported, you're vulnerable right when you get land back in home country, right? So this man was Mexican, his family, he was otherwise not a threat to society. There's no particular reason to pay for this plane ticket to deport him. Why do we do this, right? Safe and welcoming is a step toward having those people feel more safe and welcome in Wyandotte County. We're not having to worry that they could even talk to people. Get scared of even talking to the police because it's always a gamble. Will this police officer happen to ask about my status? Will they happen to report it to ICE? Because if they do, suddenly I might be under ICE's attention when normally they didn't care about me. And why is it such a big issue? It's always been an issue. It's been an issue for a long time, but in the past 4 years, the deportation rates in this country have quadrupled, right? And it includes in the Kansas City area too. So it's really out of control. It's really heavily what you would call over-policed. And so people are really in fear and danger of that minor traffic violation that happened several years ago. I could get separated from my family. For those who don't know, generally, if you get deported for any reason under the current law, I do not like this decision made by the Clinton administration several years ago, right? But if you get deported for any reason, if you have any small thing on your record, it's an easily deportable offense now. You don't have a legal option to come back to the country for at least 10 years.
Wow.
So you're separated from your family, right?
Yeah.
And people are stuck with this choice. Is my family all going to move all the way back to Mexico or Central America, which usually is not a safe choice? Or some of my kids born there, or some of my kids born here. Some of them have Mexican citizenship, some don't. So most people can't just all move back to stay together. So you're separated, right? Yeah. And I'm sure people listening here have similar stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll just add on. So one of the things is that I used to be the community organizer of El Centro. So this is how me and Trinidad also connected through being community organizers and dealing with these cases. So at El Centro, same thing. We used to see so many different cases, and there were individuals who come in, and it was minor things that was getting them in these positions. It was not turning the light to turn, not stopping seconds in the stop sign. Maybe potentially your car looks this way, and that's why they stop you. And then, they start asking for your documentation. And then maybe you don't know the language that well. And then, more things start adding on. So it's definitely something that's unfortunate. We're going to highlight something real quick. El Centro and AIR do Know Your Rights, and Know Your Rights gives information on what to do if you're in the situations, if you're in the scenarios, if you're home, if you're driving, if you're at work. They give all these different scenarios where they tell you what to do. I won't give it here, but you can definitely reach out to AIR or Centro, and they do this training. They do them in English and Spanish. Nubia Steffes is huge on Know Your Rights, and I'm pretty sure that if you guys reach out to her, she will love to go and talk to your groups. Likewise with El Centro, they really do tell the story of everything that you have to think about, and it's the smallest details that you may not think on a daily basis, but it's those things that you constantly have to be looking out for. The people that you can call if they stop you and you get to leave, then making sure that you don't go back to your own home, making sure you're to a safe place. Because if you are unfortunate enough to go into the detention centers, it is a little bit harder. We also help with Deportation Defense Legal Network, DDLN. They go in there and do Know Your Rights for individuals that are in there, so they can know what to do, if any. It is a lot of things that you have to start learning if you get into this situation, which is unfortunate because you're already going through something so traumatic. But on top of that, you have to be in a mentality where you're able to retain all the information that now you have to use in order to buy some time, in order to protect yourself, in order to show that you're a good person. You have to have 10 recommendation letters or more in order for you to identify that you're a good person. Which, at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to who decides if you're a threat or you're not a threat, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to evaluate that. So there are about 7 detention centers here around Kansas and Missouri. There's you can volunteer there too if you want to. If you are I wouldn't say in good standards with your legal status and you know Spanish and English or a different language, because there's so many different other immigrants. It's not only Spanish speakers. It's so many different languages that are needed at the moment that if any of you guys are interested, please connect back. I echo everything that Trinidad said and just wanted to add these little details in there so you guys know that you guys can get in touch with this. There's a lot of things that are going on, again, right in front of us, and the things that are needed right now is just getting more people to see that it's right in our backyard, to see that we can do something.
Diosselyn and Trinidad, we did. So you kind of answered that somewhat in regards to how you can help in the detention center. So definitely volunteering. I didn't even know you could. I didn't know that. So, and didn't realize that they have other people there that need other languages as well. So that's a great point to put out. Is there anything else that we should know about?
I guess we should clarify that. So it's like, I think Diosselyn was referring to like the DDLN will go do know your rights in the centers.
Okay.
So the centers. So some cities have a dedicated ICE detention center, like a GO is a common contractor, like Denver has that. And that sometimes the convenient thing about that is if you're advocating for people's cases, you know exactly where everyone in your area, if they get detained, that's where they are. What's really confusing in our area, we don't have one center. There's several. They're not strictly ICE detentions, they're like county jails. There's like several county jails around our region. All of them are over an hour away in any direction from Kansas City. And so it's really hard to get, and you always have to track down which center they get sent to. And their county jails and ICE will contract to use space there for the jail to hold them for ICE, right? So one nice thing about it, that overall it's not a good situation, but one nice thing is like there's some county jails like Christian County Jail that are a lot easier to work with and they're more respectable, right? But then the hard part is there's some like Morgan County Jail. It's like, man, it's like was it like 3 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours to drive there? You want to go, your father gets detained, you want to go see them before he might get deported, you gotta go all the way out over there, all the way back. It's really ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a comment from Abriel, and she said she's in for sure.
Oh.
And I do want to get back to some of these comments because they made some really good statements. The mental trauma ICE detention centers cause these kids is beyond what many people comprehend. And I think that's such a great point because you see it on TV, you know, yes, you feel something, but you are not realizing what happens. And I think this is where you all come in to educate us so we know better and can help in different ways, whatever ways, and bring the issue up more.
Yeah. I think Valeria has a really great point. This work, I want to say it's not easy, but it's definitely rewarding. And you are going to see people that are going to need that listening ear. You are going to just have to be there and listen because it's so much that individuals go through. And kind of think about it. I have a friend named Oscar. He's a social worker, and I always mention him because we have several conversations, but we have conversations where you have to start thinking of the trauma even before they migrate, because individuals have to start thinking about the choices that they have to make, just like Trinidad was saying earlier, picking between, you know, and I think Diana, you mentioned it, you know, picking between your home country and new opportunities. Maybe you have family down there still and you're leaving them behind. And so that trauma starts from the very beginning of choosing to migrate. And then we talk about the trauma that's in between when the whole migration process happens, because we don't know if we have ran into somebody who was rude to them. We don't know if they found other injustices. They might have went through the detention center and then got out. There's a whole story there that most individuals may not talk about it right away, but giving them the right space and listening, I want to say, because at that moment it's not easy to heal this wound, and knowing what the right time it is to reach out for more help, right? You really need self-care on all of this.
So that's the hard thing for people is, right, you're asylum seeker, you're usually not eligible for typical refugee services. And I know a lot of refugee groups here, they don't like that. They wish they could do more, but just how the funding works, sometimes you get the funding for refugees, and asylum seekers is a different political term. And it's hard for people. And that's the problem, is you don't have that access to that regular social worker, good refugee resettlement policies. People wonder, how can we take in so many people? It's really possible. When I lived in Washington, Washington was one of the fifth best at refugee resettlement in the country out of all our states. And they do it very effectively. There's great groups who will work on it if you just let people come in who show they're not a threat to society, let the groups know how to take care of them and help them integrate in society quickly, let them just help out and empower them to really, you know, stand on their feet. Most people will do it pretty fast. Most people are not helpless, right?
Yeah.
You know, and that kind of brings us to that universal rep topic, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we can, definitely, we have one more. Hold on one second. Do you do trainings about how activists internalize hard stories and moving immigrants past fear in these conversations to get stories?
We should create this.
We should. You really want to help us? We can do it together.
There you go.
Oh, sorry, Trinidad, you go.
No, you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's definitely needed because, you know, this topic can go on and on and on and on, but it's burnout, right? You want to make sure that everybody that is in here is taken care of as much as we're taking care of others, making sure those cups are filled.
So that's a trauma. I've done a lot of hard work for a long time. I used to volunteer for Uplift, which is the homeless in the streets. For 11 years, I did that since I was 15 until recently. I've seen a lot of traumatic things on the streets. I've seen people dying. Now the immigration crisis is more trauma all the time. So trauma means wounds. The etymology of trauma means wounds. And you can accumulate wounds, and people can heal, but you can have scars that last, right? An article did come out last fall, around November, I think, from the American Psychology Association, Compassion Fatigue and the Immigration Crisis. They found that people working in immigration law, immigration advocacy, this is the hardest it's ever been in their whole careers right now. And what they're seeing is like this continual sense of burnout, and it's not your typical compassion fatigue. And I think a lot of people who work with this, one of the things they're most tired of hearing is when people try to give them advice about compassion fatigue, because we're all saying, we know, we've been through hard stuff already. People don't understand how hard the crisis is right now, and there's no end in sight, which is the hardest part. So you learn to make do. You learn to make do, right? It's always going to be okay, but you have to find out the strategies to keep adjusting and take care of yourself. Help, most importantly, the immigrants themselves, recent asylum seekers, they have all this trauma, and that is an unmet need. Their trauma is not getting addressed, and that means that turns into generational trauma for their kids.
Yeah. Oh man, that's another topic. Would be another topic that we could talk about.
Even just go ahead. Sorry, Diosselyn.
I said I was just going to clarify one point. I know we're using refugee, asylum, and different terms interchangeably, but I just kind of want to invite individuals to go see those different legal status, because there is a difference between an asylum seeker, a refugee, somebody who becomes a permanent resident can become a permanent resident through different visas, and ultimately they become citizens. But there's multiple layers to the immigration status, and I would welcome individuals to go Google that if possible. Again, it's such a long topic to talk about, and Know Your Rights has those trainings too. So that's
Well, when you guys were talking about trauma and generational, so it can go in a way of, I know when my dad came from Guanajuato with his mom and 8 brothers and sisters alone, and didn't have a home and lived with one of her sisters. He did the opposite and was like, I'm never going to do anything with my culture. I'm white and I'm American, and don't ever call me anything else but that, and never speaking Spanish. Moved far away. We went to Olathe when nobody was over there ever. And I think you don't realize until, you yourself are now older and understand. And it's like, oh, you can be so angry at the fact that why would you do that? But then understanding the story of what this world, and especially America, what they can do to you and make you feel like it's horrible. And it's nothing that they're ever going to get mental help for, right? It's just the way of life, and you deal with it and you go forward, and you just hope your kids become better than you were.
Yeah. And we can go super deep into that, because I think we constantly see it with all our family members and all our friends and relatives. Even think about calling the police. It goes even to that. We don't see our parents calling them for XYZ reason, because it might be their legal status, and then later on we don't do it either, and it just continues to add on different things that you have to do for the circumstances.
Okay, so I didn't read this all the way, but let's see. Okay, so this is an incredibly pertinent dialogue. It's important that we continue to address the diversity of ongoing struggles across the whole of the Black and brown spectrum. The plights of people of color are intertwined, results of the same oppressive ideologies and subsequent systems of perverse abuses. I'd love to see a curriculum that addresses issues like this one, as well as those across the Black and brown spectrum, that holistically tackles unique and collective experiences, particularly. And I don't think I have the other piece yet, but
I think for the educational piece, one group I know that's kind of moving and helping to address that or bring those conversations to light is the Ignatian Solidarity Network. It's a national network which has social justice speakers, and they're bringing in more people in the past years who are speaking about Black experience, Latino experience, immigrant refugees. That's an educational resource people might look into some of the talks. Yeah. I have a story about that real quick. My dad is 70 years old, and Deanna knows my dad.
Yeah, that's so funny how worlds collide. It's the weirdest thing.
My dad's 70 years old. He's still alive, right? So that means this story is not a long time ago. And he grew up in Dallas, Texas. And when he was in high school age, he really liked the Navy back then, because his father was in the Navy in World War II. So there's the ROTC programs for like high school students and college. So there's an ROTC program, Navy ROTC in high school. He was in high school the first time in Texas history where they ever allowed Hispanics or Blacks to join that program in high school. He was one of those first people, and him and his Black friend in his neighborhood. They were, and in his his father, who I think back to just knowing how people were at the time, I don't know if his father at the time really probably was sympathetic to like black racial issues, because people usually think, you know, in their own group, right? But even his father back then went up to his neighbors and said, we have to enroll our sons in this because this is our chance to start stepping up for ourselves in this country, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the stories that we don't always hear about. Those are just internal family things that we don't spread to anyone else. It's just so personal. And I think we need to start talking about it more, because even in my own situation, after people knew about what I had been through, there were so many people around the world that are going through the same thing. And you just don't even think about that. You just think in your own little silo, it's just us and no one else. And there's so many around us that are going through that same trauma.
Yes.
Hey, I wanted to address some of the questions from earlier. People asking how to get connected with like volunteering and this. There's really a lot of great groups in our area. AIR is one of the major connector groups. So if you send me an email, well, first we'd love to see you come to our AIR network meetings. But also I recognize that some people might have volunteer intentions that might better align with other groups, like could be El Centro, could be Diosselyn, could be Asylum Clinic or something. So if you send me an email, I'll try to get you connected with the right spot. But we would love to see you at our AIR network meetings, because we really are well connected to all those different groups in different ways. Yeah. But also national movement too. People are tired of feeling like they're helpless for these national immigration policies that keep changing every few weeks in the past 4 years. Ways you can feel a part of the groups that are doing more nationally. We give a plug to Raices, who are really some of the most proactive down in Texas. They're fighting family separation a lot. Florence Immigrant and Refugee Rights Project in Arizona, fighting family separations. Which, if people don't know, family separations are still happening. There was big protest a few years ago. People don't know it's still happening all the time. One of the most innovative groups, Innovation Law Lab out of Oregon, but they work nationally too. They have national affiliates. They're some of the most proactive in being able to pull up lawsuits against some of these national policies. And I think sometimes ACLU jumps in there too on those things. And so there's groups around the country where you could even donate to help them really keep up that national effort. Gamaliel National Organizing Network is doing more actions and vigils. There's actually a vigil in Gamaliel tonight at 7 p.m.
There you go. See, yes, you can already get started.
Yeah, I think honestly, everybody out there, I think just connect, and I'm pretty sure that there is a spot and a place where you can volunteer in, because there's so many great people out here, and so many great leaders are just open and available at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where the starting point is, because like I said, I didn't know about a lot of this until I met Diosselyn and Alex, and then I met Trinidad, and it's just like, you start to get this rollingness of like access points. So this is perfect. I know we need to talk about the universal legal representation. So let's get into that part of it.
That's the fun part. That's the potential where people can feel like in our area, we can have hope of actually having immigrants be more defended, no matter what changes happen in national policy, because we know we can't all just change national policies overnight. What's the big picture on that? Again, if you don't know, immigration law, it's law, but it's not under the judicial branch. It's under the executive branch. So whoever is president at the time and place in history controls most of all immigration policy or how it's adjudicated. That's unreasonable amount of control, because now with large global migration crisis, that's a lot of international influence, right? Obviously, we really don't like the policies in this administration. I really, really don't like. They are the worst immigration policies in our country's history of immigration policies, because they're so up in the air. They're just changing all the time. But I have to recognize too, in the past administrations, regardless of party affiliation, some presidents have instituted some really stupid and dumb policy changes to immigration policy. I say that confidently because people always make changes to immigration policy who don't understand how any of the reality of immigration plays out on the ground. They're not informed policy decisions. That's the major problem. And we're tired of waiting for a bipartisan Congress to keep fighting over just a basic immigration reform package. They almost got something passed in 2013. The Senate put it together. It was a bipartisan agreement that was going to be a great first step, and then it got shut down. We're tired of waiting for the national policy to change its mind and to get with the times. So what can we do locally, and that can be part of it, plugged into a national effort? So I was impressed by my friends in Oregon. because last summer, Oregon, they won universal legal representation for all immigration cases for the whole state.
Awesome. Wow, that's huge. Like that's people need to know about that for sure. Like, wow.
Look up Innovation Law Lab. They're great. They're not the only group there. They're huge. They were successful because there's a huge collaborative across the whole state, and they're great. Innovation Law Lab is great at putting out the reports that explain what they did. So contact them if you want to look up their website if you want to see those reports in the Oregon report. So we would love to at least get that in Kansas City.
So what does that entail, and how long did it take Oregon to even get there?
About 3 years. 3 years leading up to last summer, and now there's still more work to do. But now they've had it for a year, but they keep innovating every step of the way. They keep innovating to keep up with the changing situation, right? And they got to keep improving it. But that's still a really huge victory, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So here, what would it take? I think actually I've been actively working on the issue since last summer. And we made a lot of great progress, especially recently. And a lot of the progress was first starting with building the collaborative relationship among the KC immigrant community defense. The issue, first making sure all the different groups, this is the issue we care about, right? And people generally agreed, yeah, we want to focus on that. Why that issue among other issues? If you have universal rep or at least steps to start integrating it over a number of years, then you have access to funds for people who can't afford the immigration lawyer, especially if you're in deportation proceedings. So if you're in the asylum process, if you lose your asylum case in the end, you can get deported immediately. And then plus all the other normal issues for people who are in fear of getting deported for trafficking. So if you have universal representation for people, they get that deportation defense where the studies show really clearly, if you don't have the immigration lawyer, your outcomes in court are worse by 5.5 times. So which means you're probably getting deported, right? So you could flip that around if you just had that basic legal rep. Vera Institute did a great report recently that came out this month. It's shown pretty clearly that as they polled people across party lines, Republican or Democrat, most people, when they hear about the issue, they agree that if you're going through a court in our country, you should have access to proper due process, right? That's a very American idea. We should have representation. So I found even people who, if I talk about this issue, even people who normally aren't really for immigration issues, they usually will agree. If they're going through a court, get them a lawyer. Come on, it's just ridiculous, right? You have kids on the borders, in the border towns. You have kids representing themselves in court. It makes no sense, right? So what would it take to get that here? Well, if everyone remembers the big famous case with Florencio, who got deported in our area last summer, Mayor Quinton Lucas, to his credit, came to meet with the family and give some condolences. I did put a plug in them when I met him. I was like, hey, we really could use some universal legal rep here. And he said he would agree with that. That's just that's a basic conversation. That's not like this big commitment or something. So, but we did the CanMo Ready. The initiative working on that is called CanMo Ready. Ripped off the name from Oregon Ready. And we met with, we finally got a meeting with Mayor Quinton Lucas's office to talk about the issue, why we need to move toward it. We had some good feedback. They basically agree with us on the issue. But at this point, it's still kind of on our initiative to keep growing and to research and develop step by step as we go. How would that model work in our area before we can really see it getting that really as an official thing here. But that's how Oregon did it. Oregon, their own network started pulling together the resources to start providing increasing levels of universal rep. And then eventually, as they proved that the model worked, it went over their city officials and eventually their state government, which is the right state. So that's really impressive. It's not a partisan issue, right? People just think that you should get due process, right?
Yeah, everybody deserves that. Everybody deserves to have a chance at, showing who they are and what they can provide. Universal representation is very, very, I kind of want to say, like, if you've seen those trials, if you take a moment to Google those trials, even like Trinidad said, there's 2-3 years old at courts with no legal representation. There's individuals that they probably were there at the wrong time, wrong place, and were taken in and have no idea what's going on. And that person, that guidance, somehow, somewhere would be of help for them to see some hope, because it's really sad to have to be in, I talked about the detention centers and the Know Your Rights earlier, but it's really sad to be in there trying to, again, put them so much information in their head, when a lawyer that's well rehearsed on this, that is given the proper material and the proper time, can legally represent this individual much more, and even help the family members out, because the bonds are high. They're super high to get them out.
Yeah.
And a lawyer would help so much with lowering those bonds down.
So is there a way, what do you need from, what is the next step? Like, what do you need now to be able to move this forward here?
We're kind of entering the research and development stage. Like, we know that there's generally enough support for this. We're technically, we've already started doing it between the community network, defense network. We're already kind of doing it, but we're not at the level we want, right? So to get that level, you need you research, develop a system that will work. It's possible. It'll take some work, but we do it as we go. We can't wait until later. The big issue is always money.
Yes, always.
So we're going to have to start looking at that soon, about how could we get that money allocated to that? Could it be, if the city later really agrees with us on the issue, and could there be municipal money to help get it started? Could there be a big, huge community campaign to help give money to the cause, or that, not to one organization, but that specific cause, things like that? Probably it would be, like, ideally, to really make it effective, you would want to get to the point where it could be like $1 million. But realistically, maybe starting out, if you could raise or get allocated like $500,000, that would be enough to start the process of implementing it and increasing levels of representation over a few years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So with this, with the safe and welcoming that you guys are working on too in Kansas, this will also be so helpful, just in both, to have both the safe and welcoming, and to also know that you are going to have legal representation for what you need in regard, so that way they're at least feeling like there's something there for them, right? That there are people here, which there are, but just to have these organized pieces together, knowing that you do have a process that you can go through to hopefully be okay.
And that reminds me of the big picture hope, right? So the immigration court for our area is in Kansas City, Missouri. So if you're in KCK, you have to go to immigration court. You go to that court in case it's not far from the Hallmark building. It's down the road.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
But here's how bad the problem is. So asylum cases in St. Louis, they have to come to this court. So asylum seekers there, our partner groups, IFCLA, our partner group there, they'll have to coordinate with AIR, like, oh, an asylum seeker has to get here. The court date of all times was set at 8 in the morning. We got to coordinate to get them there by train, and then your AIR volunteers can help get them from there to the court. Like, this is ridiculous. And they don't even get legal representation.
Yeah, running the documentations, getting them printed, getting those details out. AIR does a lot.
Yeah. And I knew about this organization, but didn't know a lot. And I am so interested just to learn even more about everything you do. I will be sharing the links. We have the links on the comments. I asked you and Trinidad and Diosselyn if you put something together and either leave it in the comments or send it to me. I'll push it out so that way people have this as well as the links to go with too.
Can I mention one more important point?
Yes.
Especially if you in your area, some asylum seekers, they're going through that court, get them as connected as soon as you can with the asylum clinic Kansas City, and they're our partner group too that we work with a lot. Or if you contact me, I'll get you connected with them. They get people that prep to, you're going to have to go, it's not full legal representation, but they can help people get prepped for the best way to present their case if they go to that, if they have to go to court for asylum by themselves, right? And they're doing a lot of work, yeah.
Let me put that in here.
Yes, they do amazing work. Thank you for bringing it up, Trinidad, because they do amazing work. The ladies who work there, my respects, because they see a lot, they go through a lot, and they patiently and nicely talk to the individuals who go in there to get guidance. And just to give you another plug real quick, like those applications are lengthy. They are lengthy, they are time consuming, and they also cost. So any help really does help.
Yeah.
Giving us that hand, those extra hands to work with, it's an amazing thing to do.
I mean, this is wonderful. Is there anything else before we end this broadcast that you want to tell, our community in regards to what you do? Anything that you want to end this with?
I just want to encourage everyone to go out there and volunteer. Honestly, I started this as the lead community organizer at the Centro, and they still do amazing work. I'm not there anymore, but they still do amazing work. I'm still connected with all these different organizations because it's a need, it's a must. It's so many good things that come out of it. Yes, it does sound like a lot, but honestly, it's very rewarding when you see individuals see that hope and know that there's a whole team, a whole community behind them that is ready to help them out and welcome them in with open arms. So if you guys can connect with any of them, I think you guys will be great, have a great experience, and will learn a lot because we just give you quick notes here and there, but there's so much more out there.
I would say too, sorry to say it, Eric, you always use our donations for ourselves to keep up our work, so we always appreciate that. You can look at our AIR website, airkc.org. But also in general, if you want to keep up with how these issues are evolving, again, send me an email so I can let you know you want to get on our email blast list, so you'll be more in the loop as these things are evolving. Follow our Facebook page. You'll start seeing when different things are coming up, maybe an action, maybe a campaign strategy that we want people's support on, or our phone bankings. There's a lot that will kind of evolve naturally over the next several months. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're definitely welcome to come back. We are going to be next week, I think, Diosselyn, with Randy, Alex, and Valeria. So we're just continuing to get the Latino, all Latinos voices on here, and all the things that everyone is doing to protect and continue ensuring that our communities are safe and like you said, welcoming. I mean, they feel good about being here in Kansas City, whether that's in KCK or KCMO, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just going to say, we're going to continue to host these conversations with Diana here. So please join us. The conversation with Randy and Valeria and Alex is going to be in 2 weeks. The next week, me and Alex are going to have guests with Diana, and we're going to talk more about these type of topics and what other things we should consider. Also, again, I just want to plug it out there. Go volunteer. I volunteer with AIR. They're amazing as well. So just...
You got a lot of comments, a lot of people that maybe didn't even comment but are watching, just sending in some good vibes and thank yous. And you guys are our future and are now. And these are the stories and the impacts that everybody needs to hear about, because you guys are doing the work. And I'm glad that you guys offer all your links and places to go research and even your personal, because I think that's the scariest thing sometimes when you don't know something or you don't know about something. You almost feel embarrassed. Like I felt that way even coming on here. Like, I don't know a lot about this. I should know. Like, I feel like I should know about this, being Mexican American. And I don't. My family didn't talk about it. My family was undocumented and it was never talked about. My dad never, to this day, he doesn't. And it's just something personal and I cannot force him to talk to me about it. But I think there's lots of families out there that go through that and you just don't know. So I'm so glad that you guys are bringing your voices out and allowing all of us to kind of feel okay with, we're going to be okay. We have people here to support us. And I just appreciate you guys so much.
People power goes along with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for commenting. Trinidad and Diosselyn will be putting out some more links and comments, and we'll just keep continuing this conversation. And like Diosselyn said, we're going to have her on many times and lots of amazing other community activists and leaders. And Trinidad, I'm sure you'll be back again. So we appreciate you guys so much. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.